Recently, my friends Generation Pixel and Lame Dad Retro Gamer have shared a couple of videos where they were talking about 10 games that they were excited to add to their collection. And not the top 10 games that they own or anything like that, just games that they were excited were added to their collection. And I want to go off of that theme, but kind of twist it a little bit. So about 14 years ago, I lost my job. I was out of work, and I was out of work for about 2 years. So in those 2 years, I sold my retro game collection. It was 2009. If you guys were alive then, you know the economy collapsed. And it was something where I didn't see the need of hanging on to my retro game collection when I needed to make money to make ends meet. So I sold it. Sold 95% of it. I kept like 5 or 6 games. I hung on to Star Tropics. I hung on to Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. I hung on to Star Wars Episode 1 Racer and a handful of PS2 games, but pretty much everything else went. And one of the things that I always said was that there was a particular list of games, and it's not just 10 long, but there were particular games that I knew that if I ever started collecting retro games again, had to be in my collection. And as of right now, as of today, I've got most of them. I've probably got about 75% of them, but these are the 10 that I said they need to be in my collection, and these are the 10 that I'm happiest are here. So let's start things off with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In particular, this not for resale version. So why in particular the not for resale version? So the copy I had is the copy I got with my Genesis. I got the Sonic 2 release. It was something where I was so excited to get a Genesis, and I've told this story on the channel in the past, but it was something where I was so excited to get my Genesis that my mom let me open it early, like in November, like right around Thanksgiving, to play it. And it was something where we were both just blown away by the speed of the game. And I was just astonished with how amazing of a title it was and how amazing of a game it was. And the soundtrack was wonderful and the gameplay was so fast. Like I literally felt like I was flying just through these levels. And I just loved the characters. I loved Sonic. I loved Tails. I loved fighting Dr. Robotnik. It was a kind of game that just captivated me. And it was something that I knew that when I started collecting retro games again, it was the one I had to have, and I'm thrilled it's here. I still play it regularly. I was actually just playing it on my Nomad before I started recording this. So, yeah, it's a magnificent game. All right, next up, you guys know I love handheld gaming, and one of my favorite handheld games of all time is Donkey Kong from the original Game Boy. Now, if you haven't played this one, it starts off just like you would expect Donkey Kong to start off. It feels just like the arcade game. You have the classic levels you go through. It's standard, straightforward, and simple. But after that, after you complete the 3 levels of Donkey Kong proper, things take a turn. And it's a turn for the fantastic because it's basically our precursor to the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, where you have these kind of puzzle-themed levels where you're platforming and moving through the levels and finding different objects and things like that. But it's a completely different experience than what standard Donkey Kong is. And it was a big chance for Nintendo to take on a signature character, and it's just a brilliant game. It's one that I go back to all the time, and I play frequently because of just how creative of a interpretation of Donkey Kong it was. It's not something I expected. I don't think it's something anybody expected, but it works, and it works really damn well. Next, you guys know how much I love Mega Man. I used to have the entirety of the Mega Man series. All of it. Like, everything that was produced for the Blue Bomber I owned. Up until about Battle Network. That's kind of where I stopped buying Mega Man games. But before that, I had everything, including Legends, Tron Bonne, the whole nine. I think the only one out of that series I didn't have was Mega Man 64, which I got recently, actually. So I have that one now. But my favorite is, of course, Mega Man 2. And I recently, I guess within the last couple of years, but I've gotten into collecting Famicom games, and I've decided that I don't need to own both Rockman and Mega Man games. I can own one or the other. I don't need to own every single one of them. So when I got to the point where I was like, all right, it's time to start collecting the Mega Man stuff, I looked at prices on Mega Man 2, and in the States, it's expensive. But the Japanese release for Rockman 2, not so much. It was quite affordable, and really, really happy to have this one because it plays identically. Looks great, it's just a little bit of a different title screen, and sometimes I can't read the words that are on there, but the gameplay sure is sound, and it sure is Mega Man, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. An argument can be made from both Mega Man 2 and 3 for being the best in the series, but for me, it's very, very clearly Mega Man 2. I'll play either one of them, I won't complain. But really excited to get this one and add this one back to the collection. It was a high priority item. Now, while most games I have regrets getting rid of, this one in particular I wish I'd held on to because it was complete in box and it was pristine. and it had everything in it. Every insert, every instruction manual, everything possible was in the box with it. It's as complete in box as a complete in box game can be. And it was mint, man. Like, oh god, this. If I was into grading games, which I'm not, this would have been over a 9 for whoever the hell grades games. And it had my save file, a save file I had held on to for years. And I mean, half the fun of these games is to get that save file back and to just kind of complete the quest again. But Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is one that I just, oh man. I mean, it's probably my number 2 Zelda game of all time, behind A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. And this is one where I had spent so much time with it and gone back to it so frequently, and just I'd played repeatedly on save file 2 and 3, but I always had that completed save file on save file 1 since I was a kid. And it was, well, I guess teenager, but since I was a teenager, and it's one that I do regret getting rid of. And I remember when I got rid of it, it was one of those immediate seller's remorse things where I went back to the store, I got rid of it the next day, and it was already gone. Because of course it was in perfect condition. But yeah, definitely regret getting rid of it, but super happy to have this one back, because this is an opportunity now for Meredith to play it on the original hardware and the original game, as opposed to just emulating it on Switch Online or anything like that. So stoked that this is back in the collection, a superlative Zelda entry. Next up, and this one I'm glad to have back in the collection, not only because it's a fantastic game, Batman, by the way, Batman on the NES, but one of my favorite games from when I was a kid, fantastic soundtrack, brilliant gameplay, looks wonderful, but one of the reasons I'm really happy to have this one is, as you guys have seen in previous videos, I really enjoy a cartridge that tells a story, that shows where it's been, that shows kind of its history and what it's done. And this one's no different. So here in Michigan, one of our major hospitals is Bronson Family Medicine, and this one used to belong to Bronson Child Life. And I think having a game and now keeping a game forever in my collection that used to be in a children's ward, that used to bring kids happiness, I really don't think there's a more noble thing that a game can do. And to have, not only is this a fantastic game, like it's legitimately one of the best Batman games ever made and one of the best NES games, but this is like a legit real life superhero, you know? Like this is something that made kids happy and brought them back from the brink in a lot of cases. And to be able to have a game like this and to keep its legacy alive, and to know every time I play this, it's something that helped bring a smile to a kid's face, it means a lot to me. All right, this one is special. So this one right here, this is Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 on the Game Boy. And this is one I had the case for. I had the box and all the inserts and everything like that for years. I just never saw the game anywhere. And it wasn't one that I ever was able to track down successfully or find for at least even kind of a decent price. It was always like wickedly expensive, and I'm not willing to fork over that much money to complete a game. But it kind of became my white whale, in a way. It became something that I needed to defeat, and I needed to complete eventually. And thank you to my friend Thor for completing it for me. He had a copy of the game that he wasn't playing anymore, and he sent it to me, and it's the one that's in here. This is now a complete in-box copy of a Game Boy game, which I never thought I would have. And it's, you know, now that the quest is over, I appreciate the game more, strangely enough. Like, when I was on the search for it, I saw nothing but the flaws in the title, but now that I have it, I'm actually really enjoying it. And it's nice to have on the shelf, you know? Like, it's one of those things I can look at, and it's not only a testament to maintaining something and taking care of something for a long time, but it's, you know, it's a shout out to a really dear friend of mine that helped me complete a goal. And, you know, that's really the best kind of friend you can ask for, is someone that's there for you and helps you out when you can. All right, this is a little bit different compared to the other games on this list, but this is one I completely skipped the PlayStation 3. 100% just avoided it like the plague. I hated working on it when I was at EA. I thought it was a terrible console. Developing for it was a nightmare.
I'm not as young as I used to be.
That is a loud-ass bird. Developing for it was a nightmare, and as much as there were some games on it that I looked at and went, boy, that's pretty, but I'm not buying one. I don't have any desire to own one of those. I just don't. And I still don't care for the controller. There was one particular franchise that I looked at and I went, except that one. That one I like. And when I eventually got a PlayStation 3, and I now have one in my collection, and I still hate the controller, the first series that I made sure that I bought for myself, because we initially had given the console to Victor, was Uncharted. I have 1, 2, and 3, but I'm calling out Uncharted 1 here because I did my Indiana Jones video a few weeks ago, and that was really the first time I had seen something that made me go, this is the modern day Indiana Jones. This is the new Indy. And that's exactly what I feel like with Nathan Drake. I think the character carries that same kind of flawed swagger that Indy does. He goes on, obviously, globetrotting adventures through just fantastical things and just incredible adventures. And to me, that's what an Indiana Jones game should be. And I've never really had an Indiana Jones game that made me feel like I was playing as Indiana Jones until Uncharted. And I'm still not playing as Indiana Jones, but at least I feel like it.
Let me see it.
It's such a wonderful series, and it's a series that I hold very near and dear to my heart now that I've played them all multiple times. And I do think that it's one of the strongest franchises that Sony has, and I personally love it. I mean, it is my favorite one that Sony has. I mean, it's right up there with Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man and things like that for things that I love. And this one in particular was one, like I said, when I got my PS3, I made sure that I owned Uncharted. It was imperative to me that I owned this in the clamshell, in the box, because that's how I remember the game when I was younger. And that is NHL 95. This is my favorite entry in the NHL series. This is probably the game I have played more often than any other in my life. And it was heartbreaking to get rid of it. Like, this is one of the ones I struggled with the most to get rid of, because one, I didn't get any money for it. It was worth nothing. So to get rid of it was just kind of a toss-in. Like, it's like, yeah, I've got 150 Genesis games, and yeah, NHL is one of them. You can, make me an offer. And it was something where getting it back just felt right. Like, adding it back into the collection was something where it was like, yes, okay, that's back home where it needs to be. And it's something where I just pick it up and I go to town. It's one of those things where I never feel lost when I'm behind a controller for the NHL series, especially with NHL 94, 95, 96. Those three, it's just like riding a bike. They're magnificent games. And this one, like I said, is my favorite. And having it back in the clamshell was all I really needed. All right, here's one I've talked about a bunch on the channel. And this was one where when I completed it at Torg last year in Columbus, Ohio, this was a huge highlight of the year for me. And one of my biggest gaming accomplishments last year was being able to add the Battle for Olympus back to my collection. Now, for a lot of people, this is not a landmark game. This is not something that a lot of people are going to be like, ooh, it's Battle of Olympus. That's amazing. It's a hidden gem. It's something where you love it or you don't. There's not really a whole lot of in between on it. There's not something where it's people are just like, oh, it's a very straightforward game. It's a lot like Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, and it's something where, for me, it works just like Zelda 2 does. It's a different take on an adventure. This one just happens to be set in ancient Greece, which is 100% my jam. And I think it's a really cool game. I think the music is really good. I think it looks great, and I think it plays brilliantly well. Getting all of these different mythological artifacts that give you these amazing powers, and being able to go through and fight these classic Greek creatures, these Greek mythological creatures, just couldn't be topped for me. It's a game that I truly love, and it's one that getting it back into my collection and adding it in is one that just is magnificent for me, and I think is one of the signature items in my collection. Having it complete in box was something that I said is how I wanted to do it. I passed up a loose cart plenty of times, but getting it complete in box, which is I had never done since I was a kid, makes me ecstatic. And number one with a bullet for me, and I know Stuart over at Generation Pixel is already nodding his head. He doesn't even know what game it is, but he knows what game it is Suikoden 2. And this one is twofold. One, because this is my favorite title of all time. This is one I sold a few years ago when we were kind of short on money. Meredith wasn't working much during COVID, and it was one I sold. Needed to get money back, and I was like, well, I'll be able to get it again. Never really expecting that I would ever own it again. I had other opportunities to play it. I had it digitally on the PS3, and knowing that we were going to get the HD remake of it that got announced last year, I didn't feel the need to get it, but my friend Chris from the Game Dad Show got it for me this year. And there was a letter that came with it that I'm not going to read here, but it was something that was truly special to not only get my favorite game back, but to get it from someone that I love, who's one of my best friends in the world, and for him to think that highly of me, to be able to buy me something that is not cheap, or give me something that is not cheap, was truly just. I'm still kind of floored by it. I don't really. I mean, I think we're all kind of our own worst critic, and we're all very frequently the voice of madness that's in our head, when everyone else that we love is the voice of reason. But I think, like a lot of us, I look at myself, I don't really see myself worthy of stuff like that. And for someone to see me as good enough to be able to give them something that incredible is just astonishing to me. Yeah, it's something I'm still kind of in awe that I own it again, and that it's back in my collection. And I can't thank Chris enough for that. And I can't thank my wife enough for keeping it a secret. She's usually pretty bad about giving away secrets, or at least hinting at to what secrets are. And I had no idea this one was coming. This completely came out of the blue. So, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's legitimately my favorite game of all time. And thank you. All right, there you have it, my friends. The 10 games that I am most happy to have added back to my retro collection long after I had gotten rid of them, except in the case of Uncharted. Let me know in the comments down below. What's your favorite? What games have you added back to your collection that you think are not necessarily the most valuable, the top 10, or the most important, or anything like that, but just the ones that you knew you had to have back? I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.